Okay, you want to buy a private jet. Skip the terminal in your head and go straight to the tarmac. Your car pulls up next to the aircraft, someone's already lowered the stairs, there's a hot drink waiting, and departure happens whenever you finish walking up, not according to any board overhead. No screening line, no boarding zones, no stranger's elbow on your armrest. It's an appealing picture, and it's the exact fantasy that forms in the head of anyone who's ever missed sleep for a 6 a.m. commercial flight. It's also not what money actually buys here. A jet doesn't purchase you time. It purchases a fixed bill that arrives every month regardless, one that only converts into actual time when a fairly long chain of things you don't control all happen to cooperate simultaneously. The first thing worth untangling, the airplane is not, in any meaningful sense, the product. What you're really acquiring is a position inside a much larger machine, one you now have to keep fed, staffed, insured, inspected, and sheltered, in return for the right to fly a few hundred hours of it each year. Of everything on that list, the aircraft itself turns out to be the simplest line item to understand, and across a long enough ownership, rarely even the biggest.
Start with the sticker, since that's the number everyone assumes is the whole story. A light jet, think Phenom 300 or Citation CJ4 territory, can already put you around 10 million, or well above it new. Step up to a midsize capable of actually crossing the country non-stop, and you're in the mid-20s. Go intercontinental, large cabin territory, and you're looking at $75 million to $80 million. And those are base figures before you touch the options list. And on an aircraft, that list has nothing to do with cup holders and floor mats. Satellite internet that actually functions over open ocean is a six-figure line by itself. So is a cabin interior, finished to match whatever glossy render sold you on the idea in the first place.
Here's what most people outside the industry never learn until they're already in it. You frequently can't simply order a new one and take delivery. Manufacturers sell delivery positions, and for a sought-after aircraft in a strong market, those positions can stretch several years into the future, which means the slot itself becomes something you can trade. Someone holding an early position in a hot year can flip it to a buyer who wants the plane now, pocketing a premium over the factory price without ever laying a hand on an actual airframe. Sit with that for a second, because it tells you what this entire business actually runs on. The scarce resource was never the machine. It's access to the machine, on the specific date you happen to want it.
Most first-time buyers, understandably, go used instead, and the used market runs its own trap. The total pre-owned market may show roughly 6% to 7% of the fleet for sale, but newer, low-time airframes with clean histories and current maintenance programs make up only a fraction of that supply. There might be a dozen aircraft on Earth that actually fit what you're looking for. Most of those have some flaw serious enough to explain why they're still sitting. The handful that don't are being chased by cash buyers willing to move faster than you. Serious shoppers can spend months hunting, handing fees the entire time to a broker, an aircraft consultant, and an attorney, while the best aircraft attract multiple buyers at once. And the inspection itself is no rubber stamp. A serious pre-purchase evaluation on a business jet can run well into 5 figures, and on larger or more complex aircraft can reach 6 figures, especially once records review, discrepancies, and additional maintenance are involved. You're the one paying for it regardless of outcome. And if the inspection uncovers hidden airframe damage, an undisclosed repair, or another deal breaker and you walk away, that money doesn't come back. The search simply starts again on another tail number.
Now you have to actually pay for it. And aircraft lending doesn't behave like real estate lending. Specialized lenders exist for exactly this, and their terms account for a strange kind of collateral, one that has wings and can, in theory, relocate itself to a jurisdiction with no interest in honoring your lien. Down payments run 15 to 25% on a newer airframe, considerably more on an older one, since most lenders simply refuse to write paper past a certain age threshold. On a $30 million midsize with 20% down, you're borrowing $24 million. And over a 15-year amortization, you're looking at roughly $200,000 a month or more, depending on the rate, every month, whether the aircraft flies or sits parked collecting dust. Congratulations, you now have a mortgage that can leave the country. Note that figure well, because it's the only line item in this whole business that behaves the way common sense predicts it should. Everything from here gets considerably stranger, starting with the fact that the aircraft, it turns out, comes with employees.
The first real surprise for new owners?
The aircraft doesn't need a pilot. It needs employees, plural, and a surprising number of them at that. A jet in this class legally requires 2 people up front for any given leg. But 2 pilots don't actually staff an airplane. Duty and rest regulations cap how long a crew can work and mandate specific recovery time afterward. And those rules have no interest in whether your meeting ran long. Want an aircraft that's actually available? One that can fly out Monday morning, wait for you, bring you home Tuesday night, then go again Thursday? And you need more than a single crew. An operation built around high aircraft availability may staff 3 or 4 pilots, sometimes more, with a flight attendant added on larger aircraft. Those people don't come cheap, and they've gotten considerably less cheap recently. A large cabin captain can easily command around $200,000 a year or more, and that number climbs whenever qualified pilots are in short supply. A first officer sits well into 6 figures too. Layer on benefits, payroll taxes, and mandatory simulator recurrency, training that can cost 5 figures per pilot and may also be required by the insurer. Want salaries, benefits, payroll taxes, training, and enough crew to keep the aircraft genuinely available or included? Staffing alone can run well into the hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. A payroll most small companies would recognize, attached to an asset that, on paper, is just a vehicle. The aircraft needs somewhere to sleep, too, and that somewhere isn't free. Hangar space at a decent airport runs $4,000 to $15,000 a month, depending on how badly other owners want the same real estate. And airports with more jets than covered space set that price the way any landlord sets a price when the tenants can't easily go elsewhere. Even when the airplane does absolutely nothing, it still needs expensive real estate to do it in.
Insurance follows a similar logic. Hull coverage and liability together can run anywhere from tens of thousands of dollars to several $100,000 a year. And the underwriter isn't just pricing the airplane. They're pricing your crew's total flight hours, their specific experience on this exact model, your maintenance history, and quietly, how many hours you personally intend to fly it yourself, if you're rated to fly it at all. A brand new type rating on an unfamiliar airframe can move the premium meaningfully, because to an insurer, the newest name on the paperwork is also the biggest unknown. Running all of this yourself, scheduling crew, tracking maintenance compliance, handling the regulatory paperwork, is a full-time job most owners have no interest in doing, which is why most hire a management company to do it instead, often for something around $8,000 to $15,000 a month, depending on the aircraft and scope of service. That fee buys coordination. It doesn't buy the underlying costs, which keep arriving on their own schedule regardless. Fuel is the number most people guess first, and depending on the aircraft, it can already run into thousands of dollars per flight hour. What almost nobody accounts for going in is everything attached to that hour. Engines and major components carry maintenance reserves that effectively bank money today against work that may not happen for years. Add fuel, maintenance reserves, landing and handling fees, catering, de-icing, and crew expenses, and a mid-size or super mid-size jet can burn several $1,000s every hour it flies. On a large cabin aircraft, variable operating costs can push toward $8,000 to $12,000 an hour or more, before a single dollar of the fixed costs already sitting on the books. Here's a cost most buyers never model at all until it's already happened to them. The airplane frequently has to fly to you before it can fly you anywhere. If the aircraft dropped off its last trip in Denver and you're departing from Miami tomorrow, someone has to fly it to Miami empty first. Those positioning legs cost essentially the same as any other flight: fuel, crew time, and wear towards the next overhaul, while carrying nobody you actually bought the airplane to transport. Depending on where your trips begin and end, those empty positioning legs can add a surprisingly large number of hours to the aircraft's annual flying, hours you're paying for without ever sitting in the cabin. Your private jet has now taken a private flight without you. Then there's simple availability, which owners assume is guaranteed and isn't. Scheduled inspections, unscheduled squawks, and crew duty limits all create periods when the aircraft simply isn't available, even in a well-run operation. An aircraft grounded for an unscheduled repair is logged as AOG, aircraft on ground, and depending on the part, that can mean days. It can mean weeks. The plane you bought specifically so you'd never again be at the mercy of somebody else's schedule can, on the wrong week, be exactly as unavailable as a commercial flight that's overbooked. Except now, the empty seat is one you own.
Faced with all of that, plenty of owners land on the same idea. Charter the aircraft out when you're not using it, and let someone else's trip cover part of the bill. It does work, up to a point. A well-positioned aircraft that's actively chartered can offset a meaningful portion of its ownership costs. But it isn't free money. Every charter flight burns cycles toward the next major inspection, adds wear a private owner wouldn't have chosen to add, and means the plane might not be sitting on your ramp the one weekend you actually wanted it. You bought the aircraft to escape somebody else's schedule. Chartering it out quietly reintroduces one, just with better margins than commercial.
Depreciation, meanwhile, runs less like a smooth slope and more like a series of drops. A new aircraft can lose a meaningful share of its value during its early years, and the decline isn't driven by age and hours alone. A mandated avionics upgrade or a new noise compliance rule can reduce the value of aircraft that haven't been retrofitted. At the far end of that curve sits something insurers call economic total loss, damage that would cost more to repair than the airframe is actually worth, which at point the math simply ends the conversation, regardless of how flyable the metal still technically is. This is also why a 25-year-old jet listed at a fraction of a new one's price is rarely the bargain it looks like. The airframe might sell for a fraction of what a comparable new aircraft costs. The fixed costs attached to it, crew, hangar, insurance, inspections, didn't fall by anywhere near that much, because none of those costs actually track the sale price. You can end up spending nearly what a newer aircraft costs to operate on a machine worth dramatically less, which is close to the worst financial position available in this entire market. Full-sized bills on an asset with relatively little value left to recover if you need out.
So why does anyone actually do this? Two real reasons survive the arithmetic. The first is tax treatment. Accelerated depreciation can shelter a meaningful amount of income for an owner who legitimately uses the aircraft for business and documents that use the way the IRS actually requires, which is more rigorously than most people expect going in. Get the paperwork wrong and the deductions can be clawed back later, with penalties attached. The second is a straightforward trade of money for time. Depending on aircraft type, mission profile, and charter pricing, the crossover between chartering and owning is often discussed somewhere in the 200 to 400 hours a year range. Below that threshold, you're not necessarily buying cheaper transportation. You're buying the standing option to have transportation available on your terms, which is a different product with a different price tag entirely. Trace the money through this entire arrangement, and a pattern shows up that should feel familiar by now. Almost nobody standing near the aircraft is exposed to the risk you are. The management company collects its flat monthly fee, whether your jet flies constantly or sits idle for a season. The fixed-base operator selling you fuel at the airport enjoys something close to a captive customer. You're not diverting to a cheaper pump mid-flight. The engine maker running your hourly maintenance program is, in effect, selling insurance, collecting steady payments against a future cost it controls and can price however it wants. And the manufacturer that sold you the aircraft keeps earning off it for the next 30 years through parts, service, and support that only they're positioned to provide. Brokers, appraisers, and training centers round out the list, each one collecting a fee at a different stage of an ownership that, for you, never really stops costing money in between those stages.
So, is it worth it? Depends entirely on what you're actually buying it for. As pure transportation, priced against chartering the same trips, it rarely wins until your annual hours climb well past the low end of that range from earlier. As a hedge against your own schedule and everyone else's, it's something closer to real. The ability to leave when you decide to leave, land somewhere without a connection, and turn a commercial day and a half into a business trip and back before dinner. That's real value. It's just not free. It's not a smooth monthly number. And it's not something a spreadsheet fully captures, because you didn't actually buy the freedom to fly whenever you want. The freedom you pictured at the very start never actually arrived. What arrived instead was a much more expensive, much more heavily staffed version of the exact same scheduling problem you already had, just with better coffee on the way to the gate.
If you enjoy discovering the hidden cost of owning the things most people only dream about, subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.